This is disc number 7.
We lay facing each other, snuggled under the covers, shoulders peeking out. I watched his gaze drift over my face, stopping on each feature as if he was memorizing it. Ear, jaw, mouth, chin, throat, curve of shoulder. He came back to my eyes then, lifting his hand and tracing over the individual attributes while watching my response. When his fingers trailed over my lips, they edged the border before rubbing across the lower one, and I swallowed and concentrated on breathing. His eyes fell there, and he stared for a long moment before cupping the back of my neck, moving closer, and kissing me so softly I hardly felt it, until the thin connection caught and ricocheted through me, shooting to my toes like a current. I sighed, and our breath mingled. Pushing the covers to my waist, he urged me onto my back before propping his face on his hand and continuing his perusal. My exposed skin should have been cold, but I warmed under his examination. "I want to sketch you like this." His voice was as gentle as his touch, now skirting across my collarbone, back and forth, before moving lower. "Can I assume it won't end up on the wall?" He smirked down at me. No, this one wouldn't go on the wall, as tempting a thought as that is. I've done several sketches of you that aren't on the wall." "You have?" "Mm-hmm." "Can I see them?" He gnawed his lower lip, fingers tracing along the curves of my breast and then following the bumps of each rib. "Now." His warm hand curved around my waist, and he pulled me closer. I looked into his eyes as he lay over me. "Maybe in a little while." He scooted lower. "Good, 'cause I've got a couple things I'd like to do first." He pulled on his dark boxer briefs before padding out to the kitchen. I heard the front door open and close a moment later, his voice a low murmur mixed with Francis's insistent meows. He came back with a tall glass of milk and a plate of brownie squares. Handing me the plate, he took a sip of the milk before setting it on the bedside table. I sat with the sheet held over my breasts and watched him move across the darkening room. He flicked on the desk light and picked up the sketchbook. Stacked in a corner of the desk, there were several just like the one he held. In the center of his upper back was a Gothic-looking cross, not quite high enough to peek out of a t-shirt neckline. The remaining tats were tiny scripted lines surrounding the cross, not meant to be read from a distance, just like the poem on his left side. His skin was clear from his shoulder blades down. Turning, he caught me studying him. I couldn't look away, so there was no hiding my appraisal. He crawled onto the bed, propping the pillows and sitting behind me, his legs on either side of my hips under the covers. While I lay back against his chest and nibbled a brownie, he opened the sketchbook and flipped through pages, some containing little more than shapes, lines, and vague forms. Others detailed portrayals of people, objects, or scenes. A few were finished and dated, but most were partially complete. Finally, he opened to his first sketch of me, which he must have done during class, when I sat next to Kennedy. My chin was propped in my hand, elbow on the desktop. I took the book from him and browsed page by page from there, slowly, amazed at his skill. He'd sketched two of the oldest buildings on university grounds, a guy skateboarding down the drag, and a panhandler on the outskirts of campus talking to a couple of students. Interspersed with these were meticulous illustrations of mechanical things. I turned the page to another sketch of me. This one very close up, facial features and the suggestion of hair, but little else. Scrawled in the bottom corner was a date, 2 or 3 weeks before Kennedy dumped me. "Does it bother you that I was watching you before you knew me at all?" His tone was guarded. I found it impossible to be bothered by anything at the moment, wrapped up in him as I was. I shook my head. You're just observant, and for some reason you found me an interesting subject. Besides, you've sketched a lot of people who didn't know you were scrutinizing them so closely, I assume. He chuckled and sighed. I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse. Leaning to the side, propping my head against his inked bicep, I looked up at him, still clutching the sheet to my chest in a belated show of modesty, or insecurity. I watched his heated gaze flick there before rising to my face. I'm not mad anymore that you didn't tell me you were Landon. The only reason I was angry was because I thought you were playing me. But it was the opposite of that. I let the sheet drop, and his searing gaze dropped with it. Lifting my fingers, I brushed them over the smooth skin along his jaw. He must have shaved just before I came over. I could never be afraid of you. Without a word, he took the plate from my lap and the sketchbook from my hand, before lifting and turning me onto his lap. Arms surrounding me, his mouth moved over my breasts as my hands tangled in his hair. I ignored the reproach in my mind, the one insisting that I was the one withholding information now, and while I might not fear Lucas directly, I feared his desertion if I told him what I knew and how I knew it. Inhaling the now familiar smell of him, I dragged my fingers across the words and designs on his skin as he kissed me, banishing my shrill pang of conscience to a distant drone. Chapter 23. So where's... Benji's voice trailed off when I glanced at him, and he finished his sentence with a quick head angle toward Lucas's unoccupied seat and a characteristic eyebrow waggle. It's final review day, so he doesn't have to be here. Ah, he smiled, leaning over the arm of his desk and lowering his voice. So, since you know that bit of inside info, and you two left class together the last couple of days, can I assume that somebody's getting a little private tutoring now? When I pinned my lips together, he snorted a laugh, held up a fist, and sing-songed, "Nailed it!" Rolling my eyes, I bumped his knuckles with mine, knowing he'd hold his fist aloft between us until I did. God, Benji, you're such a bro at all. He grinned, eyes wide. Woman, if I was straight, I would steal you from him so hard. We laughed and prepared to take macroeconomics notes for the last time. Hey, Jacqueline. Kennedy slid into the empty seat next to me, and Benji gave him a narrow-eyed stare that he didn't deign to notice. I wanted to give you a heads up. He sat sideways in the desk, facing me, keeping his voice low. The disciplinary committee decided to let him stay on campus for the next week, as long as he abides by the restrictions of the restraining orders, because he's pled innocent, and because there's only a week left in the semester. He has to vacate the premises as soon as finals are over, though. I already knew Buck was out on bail, and that he'd been served the temporary restraining order on Thursday afternoon. Chaz had called Erin to tell her, and she'd passed the information to me, as well as to Mindy and her parents. Awesome. So he's staying in the house? We'd all hoped he would be kicked off campus, but administration was embracing an innocent until proven guilty stance. Yeah, for the next week, but then he's gone. The frat doesn't have to be as impartial as university officials do. He smiled. Apparently DJ saw the light after Katie told him off. Dean finally agreed. Letting Buck stay for finals week was the only compromise they made, and he's only allowed to go to his scheduled finals and back. Laying his warm hand over mine, he stared into my eyes. Is there anything I can do? I knew my ex well enough to know what he was actually asking, but there was no second chance for him in my heart. That place was filled. But even if it hadn't been, I was sure that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who could desert me as he'd done. Twice. I withdrew my hand into my lap. "No, Kennedy, there isn't. I'm fine." He sighed and shifted his gaze from my face to his knees. Nodding, he looked at me one last time, and I was both gratified and saddened to see the full realization of what we'd lost in his familiar green eyes. Standing to go to his seat, he excused himself to edge past my late-arriving neighbor who, for once, had nothing to say about her weekend plans. Freshman year weeded out musicians who'd ruled their high school orchestra, band, or choir without a lot of practice. The ones who came to college believing themselves to be above mundane technical proficiencies like scales and internals, let alone music theory. Most music majors were devoted to perfecting our skills, so we spent hours a week practicing, often hours a day. Nothing was ever perfect enough to risk slacking off. I'd come to campus a little spoiled. At home, I'd practiced whenever I wanted to. Mom and Dad had never limited me, though admittedly, I was reasonable in my practice times. Unable to keep my furniture-sized bass in my dorm room, I had to procure a locker for it in the music building and schedule booth times to play. I quickly learned that evening spots went fast. Though the building was open nearly 24/7, I didn't want to trudge across campus at 2 a.m. to practice. Scheduling jazz ensemble rehearsals was even more of a pain. Beginning freshman year, we met 2 or 3 times a week. Recently, it had become obvious why Sunday morning studio reservations were easy to get. Sunday was hangover day for much of the student body, and fine arts majors weren't immune. By halfway through the fall semester, most of us had skipped Sunday morning rehearsal once or twice. What worked freshman year wouldn't work at all by the time we were juniors. Just before the peer recital began on Friday night, I reiterated to one of our horn players why I couldn't make the hastily assembled last-minute rehearsal on Saturday morning, even though our performance was that evening. "I have a class tomorrow." Yeah, I know, your self-defense class. Fine, if we suck tomorrow night, it's on you." Henry was undeniably gifted, as if he'd been born with the saxophone in his long-fingered hands. His pompous attitude backed by genuine skill, he usually intimidated the hell out of all of us. In that moment, though, I was tired of him being an ass. "That's bullshit, Henry." I glowered at him as he slouched smugly on the other side of Kelly, our pianist, who'd opted to stay out of the argument. "I only missed 1 rehearsal the entire semester." He shrugged. "But it's about to be 2, isn't it?" Before I could reply, the recital began. I sat back in my seat, gritting my teeth. I was as much of a serious musician as anyone else in our group, but Saturday was the last self-defense class, the culmination of everything we'd learned. It was important. Aaron was stoked about the one-on-one matches Ralph had planned between each of the class members and either Don or Lucas. "I'll try to get Don," she'd promised, while she got dressed for work and I got ready for the last mandatory peer recital of the semester. Squinting one eye into the mirror while applying a layer of mascara to the other, she'd teased, "I don't want to wreck your boy Toy's vital parts before you're done playing with him." I hadn't heard from Lucas all day, though we were both so busy that I almost didn't have time to dwell on the absence of communication and what it meant. Almost. A year ago, I hadn't thought I would ever sleep with anyone but Kennedy. He'd been with other girls before me. If nothing else, his experience during my first time made that clear. That fact hadn't bothered me much, though we'd never actually spoken about it. Lucas, too, was obviously experienced, though he told me none of those previous girls had been significant. If Kennedy had ever confessed something like that, I'd have been relieved, if not thrilled. Lucas's encumbered history made his revelation heartbreaking instead, and I was uncertain what it meant for him, for me, and for us. At the beginning of class, we reviewed every move we'd learned while Ralph circulated the room, giving tips and encouragement. Don and Lucas were absent for the first portion. Ralph wanted us to remain emotionally separated from them, so we wouldn't feel awkward inflicting violence on them in the last hour. I wondered, though, how many of us wasted precious seconds worrying that we were overreacting. Tiny, valuable ticks of time spent not defending ourselves, thinking, but I know this guy. My heart in my throat. I watched as each of my classmates used their newfound defense techniques on a fully padded Lucas or Don. As we took our turns on the mats, each of us benefited from a bloodthirsty 11-person cheering section, while the guys took turns so they could rest up from being pummeled, kicked, and verbally reviled. Since the padding cushioned our blows, they had to do a bit of acting, adjusting their reactions as though each landed punch or kick had done its job. So when Aaron saw an opening and swung a perfect sweep kick to the groin, Don crumpled to the ground as if incapacitated. 11 voices screamed, "Run, run!" But Don's big, padded body blocked a straight escape to the designated safe zone by the door, and Aaron hesitated for a split second. He rolled toward her, and we screamed even louder. Roused, she leapt onto his chest like it was a springboard and launched herself, turning when she landed and kicking him 2 more times before running away. When she reached the far door, she pumped both fists in the air and bounced up and down while everyone cheered. Ralph clapped her on the shoulder as she rejoined us, and I glanced at Lucas. Wearing his ghost smile, he watched her. One more woman, empowered. One more given the ability to defend herself against attack. One more who might not meet his mother's fate. His eyes found mine, and I wondered if these single, hopeful moments would ever be enough to alleviate the ache that haunted him. The ache about which I was presumably unaware. Pulling his gaze from me, he went to wait for the next potential victim to walk onto the mats. There were 2 of us remaining. A very soft-spoken secretary named Gail from the Student Health Center, and me. Ralph eyed the 2 of us. "Who's next?" Gail stepped forward, trembling visibly, while Ralph murmured subtle tips, something he hadn't done for anyone else. Lucas went easy on her. Our booklet said that having the confidence to fight back was a critical part of self-defense training, and I knew they were giving her that. The more punches and kicks she landed, the louder we cheered her on, and the harder she fought. When she returned to the group and accepted our emphatic praise, there were tears on her face, and she was still wobbly, but she wore a mile-wide smile. I went last, against Don. My adrenaline spiked the moment I stepped onto the mat, and I wondered if the tiny shock waves running through me were visible to everyone, like Gail's unsteady hands had been as she held her small body in defense mode. I knew Lucas and Aaron were watching me closely. They were the only ones who knew exactly what had brought me there. The entire thing was over in a minute, maybe 2. Don circled me once, mumbling, "Hey, baby," comments, part of the scenario. I kept my eyes on him, my whole body taut, waiting. Suddenly, he swerved toward me and tried to grab my arm. I did a wrist block, then screwed up a snap kick and ended up in a front bear hug. I wasn't sure if it was in my head, or actually shouted, because everything seemed slow motion and muted, like we were underwater. But I heard Aaron's voice yell, "Nutsack!" I brought my knee straight up, tearing from Don's grasp when he grunted and released me. Running to the door, I heard Erin's cheerleader voice rising over everyone else's. She bounded across the room to hug me when I reached the safety zone, and over her shoulder, I watched Lucas's expression. He'd removed his headgear and combed his sweaty hair back, so I could clearly see his face, and the familiar, barely there smile. Lucas, "You did well this morning." Me, "Yeah?" Lucas, "Yeah." Me, "Thanks." Lucas, "Coffee Sunday? Pick you up around 3? Me, "Sure." Smiley face. Saturday night's performance demanded my full attention. distracting me until I was in my room. Erin hadn't returned from yet another sorority gathering, but was due back soon. The entire dorm was wide awake, studying for, or freaking out about, finals, enjoying the last full weekend before break, or well past ready to go home. The voices in the hall alternated between pre-finals tension and pre-holiday excitement. A deep-toned bass line seeped through the wall opposite my bed, and my fingers moved with it. Occasionally, the fact that I played the bass would come up with strangers, who typically imagined an electric instrument in a garage band. Lucas looked more suited to that part than I did. Dark hair falling into his eyes, small silver ring following the curve of his bottom lip. Not to mention the tattoos and lean, defined muscle that would look so hot on stage, peeking from a thin t-shirt. Or no t-shirt. Oh God. Never getting to sleep. My phone beeped and displayed a message from Erin. Erin, talking to Chaz. Maybe late. You okay? Me. I'm good. You okay? Erin. Confused. Maybe I'd feel better if I just kicked him. Me. Nutsack. Erin. Exactly. These people are crazy. Knees pulled to my chest, I cuddled close to Lucas as he sketched a couple of kayaks out on the lake. It's got to be even colder out there on the water than it is sitting here. He smiled and reached behind me to pull my coat's hood up over the wool and cashmere scarf and hat I was wearing. You think this is cold? He crooked an eyebrow at me. I scowled and touched my gloved fingers to my nose, which had the anesthetized feeling that comes from a shot at the dentist, right before they drill a tooth. My nose is numb. How dare you scoff at my sensitivity to ice age temperatures? And I thought you were from the coast. Isn't it warmer there? Chuckling, he stuck his pencil above his ear under his cap, closed the sketch pad and laid it on the bench. Yeah, it's definitely warmer on the coast. But that's not where I grew up. I'm not sure you could survive a winter in Alexandria if you're this much of a candy ass. I gasped in pretend outrage, punching him in the shoulder while he feigned being unable to block the blow. Ow, jeez, I take it back. You're tough as nails. He turned and slid his arm around me, rewarding me with that full smile. Total badass. Between his proximity in the physical sense and his embrace in the emotional sense, I hummed happily and cuddled closer, closing my eyes. I throw a mean hammer fist, I mumbled into his hoodie. His leather jacket lay folded on the bench next to the sketchbook. He'd insisted it wasn't cold enough to need it, except on the motorcycle. He echoed my hum, tipping my head back with an ungloved, curiously unfrozen finger. You do. I'm actually a little scared of you. Our faces were inches apart, his breath mingling with mine in one evaporative cloud between us. I don't want you to be scared of me. The words I couldn't bring myself to add swirled through my mind. Talk to me. Talk to me. Barring that, I wanted him to kiss me so I wouldn't feel the guilt escalate, threatening to spill out in one irrevocable confession. As if I'd made that request aloud, he lowered his head and kissed me softly. Chapter 24. Most people would take off as soon as they handed in the last final. Erin was leaving on Saturday, but I was staying because my favorite middle school student had invited me to his concert Monday night. He had made first chair and wanted to show off. We were required to vacate the dorms for winter break by Tuesday, so I would be going home that day, whether I wanted to or not. Maggie, Erin, and I met in the library to study for our last astronomy exam of the semester. Around 2 a.m., Maggie flopped face down onto her open textbook with a dramatic sigh. Ugh, if we don't take a break from this shit, my brain is going to be a black hole. Erin said nothing, and when I looked at her, she was checking her phone, scrolling through a text and then replying. She hit send and noticed I was looking at her. Huh? Her brown eyes were a little wide. Chaz was just letting me know the guys are taking turns keeping an eye on Buck, making sure he doesn't leave the house. I thought we weren't talking to Chaz, Maggie mumbled sleepily, eyes closed, cheek pressed to the page we were reviewing. Erin's eyes landed anywhere but mine, and I knew she'd abandon that plan. I decided to let her fidget a little longer before I let her off the hook. I'd always liked Chaz, and could only fault him so much. I wouldn't want to believe my best friend was a monster either. Checking my phone, I reread the texts I'd sent Lucas earlier, and his replies. Me. Econ final? Pwned. Lucas. All because of me, right? Me. No, because of that Landon guy. Lucas. Wink. Me. My brain hurts. I have 3 more exams. Lucas. 1 more for me Friday, then work. See you Saturday. Mindy's last final is tomorrow. Erin doodled a design around an equation in her notebook. I heard her dad is sitting in the hall during all of her finals, Maggie said. I'd heard the same rumor. I can't blame him if that's true. We watched Erin, who knew the truth between fact and campus gossip. She nodded. He is, and she's not coming back except to testify. She's transferring to some small community college back home. The regret in her eyes was bottomless. Her mom said she's still having nightmares every night. I can't believe I just left her there. Maggie sat up. Hey, we left a lot of people there. It wasn't our fault, Erin. I know, but... She's right. I made Erin look at me. Put the fault where it goes. On him. I finally told my parents about Buck. I hadn't talked to them since before Thanksgiving. Due to something left out of order in the pantry, Mom figured out that I'd been home and called me. I guess she wanted to make sure a stranger hadn't broken into the house and unalphabetized her grains and condiments, so I had to fess up. But you told me you were going to Erin's. Instead of telling her that she'd come to that conclusion by herself, that I'd only mentioned Erin once, that she'd never bothered to verify what I was actually doing over Thanksgiving break, I lied. It was easier for both of us that way. Coming home was a last-minute decision. No big deal. She started jabbering about the things we needed to do over the break. I was due for a dental appointment, and my truck's registration would expire in January. Do you need an appointment with Kevin, or have you found a stylist there? She asked. Instead of answering her question, I blurted it all out. Buck's assault in the parking lot, Lucas saving me, Buck raping another girl, the charges we were pressing, the upcoming criminal case. There was no stopping it once it started. At first, I thought she hadn't heard me, and I gripped my phone thinking, I'm not repeating all of that if she's too damn busy decorating for her party to listen to me for 10 seconds. And then she choked out, Why didn't you tell me? She knew why, I think. I didn't need to say it. They hadn't been the best parents. They hadn't been the worst either. I sighed. I'm telling you now. She was silent for another strained moment, but I heard her moving through the house. They were hosting their annual catered holiday party on Saturday, and I knew how control freak and anal Mom was about the house being perfect for that. Growing up, I'd learned to make myself scarce during the entire week leading up to that party. I'm calling Marty right now to tell him I'm not coming in tomorrow. Marty was Mom's boss at her software consulting firm. I can be there by 11. I recognized the sound of her dragging her wheeled suitcase out from the closet under the stairs. I gaped into the phone for a moment before sputtering to life. No, Mom, I'm fine. I'll be home in less than a week. Her voice shook when she answered, shocking me further. I'm so sorry, Jacqueline. She said my name as though she was trying to find some way to touch me through the phone. I'm so sorry this happened to you." My God, I thought. She's crying. My mother wasn't a crier. "And I'm sorry I wasn't here for you when you came home. You needed me and I wasn't here." Alone in my room, I sat on my bed, dazed. "It's okay, Mom. It's not like you knew." She'd known about my breakup with Kennedy, but I was ready to let that go too. "You raised me to be strong, right? I'm good." I realized as I said it that it was true. Can I set up an appointment for you with my therapist, or one of her partners if you'd rather?" I'd forgotten Mom's occasional therapy sessions. She'd been diagnosed with an eating disorder when I was really young. I didn't even know what it was. Bulimia, anorexia. We'd never really talked about it. "Sure. That would be good." She sighed, and I thought I heard relief. I'd given her something to do. After we finished several cartons of Chinese takeout and a conversation about how we chose our respective majors, Lucas fished his iPod from his front pocket and handed me the earbuds. "I want you to hear this band I just found. You might like them." We were sitting on the floor with our backs to my bed. Once I was plugged in, he pushed play, watching me as I listened. His eyes locked with mine as the music swelled in my ears. I couldn't hear anything outside of it. Couldn't see anything but his eyes on me. He leaned closer, and I inhaled the soothing scent of him. Cupping my face in his hand, he moved his mouth to mine, kissing me at a leisurely pace that somehow matched the rhythm of the song. He tasted like the wintergreen Tic Tacs he'd been sucking on. Handing me the iPod, he picked me up, deposited me on the bed, and lay next to me, drawing me into his arms and kissing me until the first song bled into the next, and the next. When he pulled back to trace a finger over the edge of my ear, I removed an earbud and handed it to him. We lay side by side on my narrow dorm bed, the length of which only just accommodated the length of his body comfortably, listening together, immersed. He opened a new playlist, and I knew that the song he chose was something for me, beyond a band he wanted to share, or something for us to discuss musically. My heart reached for him as we listened, staring at each other, and I felt the threads of connection between us, fragile filaments so easily snapped. Like the poem etched into his side, we were each curving to fit inside the other, and this melting and reshaping could be deeper, more resilient. I wondered if he felt it, and when I listened to the lyrics of this song that he chose, I thought maybe he did. "Now don't laugh, 'cause I just might be the soft curve in your hard line." The hallway outside my door was mostly silent, finally, after a day of people packing up and moving out that had begun early. We talked, recent history only, and Lucas relayed the story of how Francis came to be his roommate. He showed up at the door one night, demanding to be let in, napped on the sofa for an hour, then demanded to be let out. It turned into a nightly ritual, with him staying longer and longer, until at some point I realized he'd moved in. He's basically the most brazen squatter ever. I laughed, and he kissed me, laughing too. Still smiling, he kissed me again, hands wandering over my waist and hip. As we started to make out, I panted out the fact that Erin wasn't leaving campus until tomorrow, and therefore could walk in any moment. "I thought you said she was leaving today." I nodded. She was, but her ex-boyfriend is charting a relentless campaign to get her back, and he wanted to see her tonight. His hand wandered under my shirt, exploring. "So what happened with them? Why did they break up?" My lips parted when his hand cupped one breast, molding it to his palm as though it was meant to fit there. "Over me." His eyes widened slightly, and I smiled. "No, not like that. Chaz was Buck's best friend." I hated how my body constricted when I thought of Buck, how my teeth grated when I said his name. Without even being present, he triggered responses I couldn't quell, and that infuriated me. "He's gone now, right?" he asked. "He's left campus?" Transferring his arm to my back, Lucas pressed me closer, his hand at the back of my neck. Closing my eyes, I burrowed my head beneath his chin, nodding. "I doubt he'll be allowed to come back next semester, even before the trial," he said. I breathed him in, closing my mouth tight and inhaling the scent of him through my nose. I felt sheltered by him, safe. I'm always looking over my shoulder. He's like one of those Jack-in-the-Box clowns. I never told you about the stairwell, did I? I wasn't the only one incapable of suppressing physical reactions. His body stiffened, and his grip on me was suddenly less gentle, more charged. "No." Mumbling the story into his chest, trying to stick to facts and nothing else so I could temper my own response, I ended with, "He made it look like we'd done it in the stairwell. And from the looks on everyone's faces in the hall, from the stories that circulated after, they believed him." I forced the tears back. I didn't want to cry over Buck anymore. But at least he didn't get into my room. Quiet for so long that I thought he wasn't going to comment, he finally pushed me onto my back, wedging one knee between mine and kissing me roughly. His hair tickled the side of my face, and I wrenched my hands, trapped between us, free, plunging them into his hair as though I could pull him closer. The way he kissed me felt like a brand, like he was tattooing himself under my skin. He knew all of my secrets, and I knew his. But that seeming reciprocity was a lie, because he hadn't been the one to reveal his own. I'd excavated them, and worse, he was unaware of it. My guilt mushroomed between us, along with my longing for him to share that part of himself, to trust me with it. I was going home in 3 days. I couldn't bring this up with miles and hours between us, or keep it to myself for weeks longer. When we slowed again, wrapped up in each other and allowing our libidos and heart rates time to decelerate, I saw an opening. "So, you sort of live with the Hellers and their family friends?" He watched me and nodded. "How did your parents meet them?" Turning onto his back, his teeth slid over the ring in his lip, and he sucked it into his mouth. I recognized this as his stress-disclosing equivalent of Kennedy's neck rubbing. "They went to college together." The earbuds had been dislodged sometime during the last half hour. He turned the iPod off and wound the wires around it tightly. "So you've known them all of your life?" He pushed the iPod into his front pocket. "Yeah." Images of what I'd read, and what Dr. Heller had revealed, flashed in front of my eyes. Lucas needed comforting. I'd never known anyone who needed it more. But I couldn't console him over something he hadn't shared. "What was your mother like?" He stared up at the ceiling, and then closed his eyes, unmoving. "Jacqueline." The scrape of a key in the door startled both of us. The room was unlit, except for a low-watt desk lamp. When the door opened, a block of light filled with Erin's silhouette fell across the floor in the center of the room. "Jay, are you already asleep?" she whispered, her eyes still adjusting from the bright hallway. Or she'd have seen that I wasn't alone in bed. No?" Lucas sat up and swung his feet to the floor, and I followed. Timing is everything, I thought. After tossing her purse on her bed and kicking off her shoes, Erin turned back toward us. "Oh, hey! I think I might have some laundry I need to do." She shrugged out of her coat and grabbed her nearly empty laundry basket. "I was just leaving." Lucas bent to pull on his black boots and lace them up, mouthing, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," over his head. Erin was the picture of contrition. I shrugged and mouthed back, "It's okay." Following Lucas into the hall, I gripped my opposite arms, cold after the warmth of lying next to him. Tomorrow? He zipped his leather jacket before turning to me, his lips set firm. His eyes slid from mine, and I felt the wall between us then. Too late. Our gazes connecting, he sighed. It's officially winter break. We should probably use it to take a break from each other as well. I tried to form an intelligible protest, but wasn't sure what to say. I'd just pushed him to this after all. Why? The word rasped from me. You're leaving town. I will be too for at least a week. You need to pack up, and I'll be helping Charles get final grades posted over the next day or so. His justification was so logical. There was no concealed thread of emotion I could wrench free. Let me know when you're back in town. He bent to kiss me quickly. Bye, Jacqueline.
This is the end of disc number 7. Please continue listening on disc number 8.